Welcome to GTFO out of the USA. We're here today for Manizales, Colombia, and we have two special guests who are experts if you're interested in how to migrate to Colombia because you get 90 days as a US or Canadian citizen when you first come to the country. But then after that, you have to get an extension and you got to pay fees. And so the most you can stay in a calendar year is 180 days. So if you love your experience here in Colombia like we do, and you want to stay later, you're going to have to start planning for how to migrate and get a longer stay visa. So we have two special guests who are experts in how to, migrate and we're going to talk about the different kinds of visas and so forth.
And I just wanted to say we have had quite a journey getting our Colombian migrant visa. And luckily, my visa just got approved yesterday. So I'm very excited about that. And actually, Robin here helped us with the FBI background check. So I'll turn it over to you now. Robin and Andres are two Colombian immigration experts.
Hi, everyone. My name is Robin. I am the founder of ColombiaVisa.com and also OnCallColombia.com, where we do FBI background checks in 24 to 48 hours from Colombia. And then I'm joined by Andrés Suescún, who is our lead attorney for both brands. And I'll let Andrés introduce himself. I'm from Houston, Texas, by the way. I've been living the first time I've visited Colombia was 2017 to learn Spanish. And then came back right at the tail end of the pandemic and decided to stay.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. Nice meeting you, Mauricio, Katia.
Likewise.
Well, I am Colombian attorney. I bring, over a decade of experience helping internationals, expats navigate what is investment and residency in Colombia. Increasingly in Ecuador and Panama, but mainly focused in Colombia.
Great. So I would love for you to give us a little bit of an overview. Our case is very specific. Mauricio here is a Colombian citizen, so he didn't need to apply for a Colombian visa, but I needed to. And so we went through this pathway of applying for a marriage-based visa. But I was just curious what visa options are available for those who are coming from United States or Canada or Europe, and also just the general stats of what countries most of the clients that you work with are coming from.
So I think Andres can speak to all the different types of visas and some of the more popular ones and not so popular ones, some of the ones that are easier to do. Just because first of all, I'm American, so the On-Call Colombia brand is more focused on Americans. So we do have a lot more American customers. We're experts in getting American documents legalized for Colombia. So just by virtue of that, we have a lot of American clients, but we're also seeing a lot of clients from Canada, from the UK, from Australia as well. And Anders, I'll let you describe the whole visa landscape.
Right. Well, at a high level, yes, the bulk of people we work with are still coming from the United States. In my private practice, I would say Western European countries, large economies such as Germany, France, the UK a lot. If you count those in, like the Western European bloc, those outweigh in number the United States clients that I've worked with over the years. Increasingly, Canada and, some more other exotic countries of origin, such as the Middle Eastern countries, some African countries such as South Africa, Morocco, Israel, increasingly over the last years. So yeah, what I think it's really interesting, and this is the part that normally gets underrated, is that these nationalities are arriving not in Colombia like as our last resort, but I think it's a sign of agency and people noticing, especially in Colombia's case, the return and the incentives that are here to invest and to relocate. So to go back to your question of what are the visa options out there, well, it depends on what you're looking for. There are broadly speaking, two visa types, visitor types. Visitor types visas include for voluntary reasons or um, temporary work,
Mhm.
maybe visiting or diplomatic missions, but they don't count towards residency. Probably the most notorious visitor type visa would be the increasingly popular digital nomad visa, which has increased in like in the large number of the clients reaching to us are asking for it because of it's like a trial run to maybe aim for 2 years and see if the country these are oriented for people with large freedom of mobility that can maybe work remotely. So maybe the digital nomad visa works great for them to maybe test the waters for 1 or 2 years before they move on to a migrant visa. Migrant visas are like the visas that are aimed for permanent residency.
Like
This
we
would
are.
be,
Mhm.
yes, by the way, congratulations on your recent approval.
Thank you. I'm very happy about that.
Now, on the nomad visa, is it an automatic 2-year visa?
It's up to it can be approved up to 2 years.
Up to.
There's full discretion from the visa authority as to how long do they approve it for. So it could be anywhere from 1 year to 2 years would be like the most common outcomes.
And that's the most popular form of applicants you're seeing?
Because it's a very recent type of visa. It got regulated in 2022.
Mhm.
So the first outcomes were very positive. It has, as years go by and the internal like government officials from the visa office get more accustomed to the cases, the more they tend to put more restrictions and come up with additional requirements that are not explicitly written in the law.
Mhm.
Right.
Probably you don't hear about them very often in the forums or to ChatGPT, which puts a lot more value on having expert guidance, someone who's constantly exposed to the visa process.
Yeah, that's a good
And
point, Andres. I just want to say with the FBI background, when we applied, one of the requirements was not the FBI background. So we learned about it afterwards, and then our application expired because we were waiting because it was during the government shutdown, and then the FBI sent us the wrong information. So then we applied again. So my recommendation is get the FBI background first before you apply.
Yeah, it's best to get all your
All
documents
the
ready
documents.
before filing for a visa.
And along
that's
those, yeah, you want to say something, Robin?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so that's kind of like one of the things that I think puts us in an advantage when people work with us. We've seen all the different requirements that have come in. So now
Sure.
when we put in an application, and to your point, as far as how many years you go, it's kind of important to craft the right story. So if you craft a story that makes you feel like you should belong here for 2 years, you'll have a better chance of getting 2 years. One example is when people get a shorter health insurance term. Well,
Mhm.
Cancellator is going to look at it and they say, okay, the health insurance is going to expire in 10 months. So we'll just do it for 10 months. So it could even be less than 1 year. So we
Okay.
look at the entire story. We try to craft a story that will look good in terms of how much income someone is making, what kind of benefits that this person will add to the country, and all these hidden requirements that we've seen over time. We mitigate those at the very beginning.
And those are great points because that's what we did it. We did it on our own. We initially did a consultation with a lawyer, kind of gave us the bullet points, what we needed
Which was helpful
was
because
helpful.
we started gathering all the documents while I was still in the United States, and
But then, we ran into roadblocks because it's not quite always clear what they're requesting and what you're uploading. And so there's a little bit of a stress involved.
it's better to work with the experts. You
I think
can
it's better work.
outsource
Yeah.
the stress.
Especially if you don't speak the language and you don't, as an American or a foreigner, you don't understand the terminology, what immigration's requesting, then that creates a whole nother level of challenge as well. Just little tips there for those of you who are thinking of doing it on your own, it's not, that's a harder approach, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Yes, it is a system that rewards, I would say, preparation and having enough clarity in advance in order to have the best possible outcome.
Right.
You need proper guidance for that. At that point, it's not a matter of shortcuts. You really need enough experience, someone with enough clarity, and being ready to anticipate the questions before they are asked. And that only comes with enough exposure to these kind
Right,
of.
right. That's a good, yeah.
So in your experience, has it been getting harder to apply for a visa in Colombia? Are the requirements getting more strict?
Yeah, there's two reasons why it's getting much more difficult. One of the reasons is recently the minimum wage was increased by 23%. And the minimum wage is the base for almost everything else in Colombia. There's accountants, for example, that will charge you based on the minimum wage. So if you ask them for their fee, they'll say it's one monthly minimum wage. Because of that minimum wage increase, the investment requirements for a lot of visas, whether it's a business visa or an investment visa, those have gone up. For a retirement visa, the amount of retirement benefits you should be getting, that requirement has gone up. So it's getting a little tricky, especially for people that have already had visas in the past. Now they're up for renewals, and with the renewals, they have to almost invest the same amount. So that has caused a little bit of trickiness. And then the second part about it is, especially with Americans, the number of Americans that have had visas in Colombia in the past 3 years have nearly tripled. So I think in 2022, 2023, it was maybe 20,000, and now it's up to 60,000. So because of that, I think they opened the gate up too much, and now they're clamping down a lot more.
Oh, I see.
Andres, do you have anything to share about that?
Well, yeah, I think the short answer is it would depend on which part of the system of the visa process you're referring to. But of course, with the increase of the minimum wage, you have a harder standard to meet now. But I wouldn't characterize it as fundamentally harder.
I mean, how does that translate in dollars to qualify?
So to give you an example, for a business visa, you need to invest 100 times the minimum monthly salary. So last year, before the increase, and there's another thing at play where the dollar is weakening,
Sure.
and you have to invest in pesos, so your investment amount goes up. So last year in I would say Q4 of last year, the investment amount for a business visa might have been $35,000, and now it's like $42,000. So it used to be 100, like under 150 million pesos,
Yes.
and now it's 175 million pesos. So it's 25 million pesos more.
Okay.
And what about like real estate investment if you want to buy a property in Colombia?
So everything has increased by 23% because of the increase all across the board is 23%. So what this means is if you had a property in the past and now it doesn't meet the threshold, you might have to buy a new property, and that's a very serious situation for a lot of people.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Okay.
With the business visa, it's a little bit easier because when people with the business visa, when they go to renew, they just have to make up the difference. But it's difficult to make up the difference on a property.
Right. No, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
something like let's say you buy a property here in Colombia, you get an investor visa. How long is it good for? How many years do you get with that?
So you can get it for upwards of 3 years, same as any other type of visa limitations. There's enough discretionary measures and freedom from the visa office to make a decision. But the key point is to, as Robin mentioned before, to actually have a strong, solid case and to actually have a business plan if it's a business investment visa, especially business investment visas, which require higher compliance and maintenance to be able to, what you want to make sure is that you have a solid foundation that holds up over time. It's not just a matter of getting approved. You also have to plan everything from the first application for when it comes time for you to renew the visa. If they get granted for 1, 2, or 3 years, you need to be ready. So what we do is we make projections as a matter of in the form of an advice for most of our clients to maybe make a projection based on the previous minimum wage increases over the years, and that allows us to arrive to a more solid investment level that will hold up for 3 years. So in this case, for real estate property investments, we're looking at today's exchange rate. It's closer to $65,000 for real estate investment. Those are lower maintenance because the only requirement is for you to hold the property. So as long as you hold the property 3 years from now, you can reapply for a renewal and you'll most likely get it. But when it comes to business investment visas, creating a Colombian company, you have to remain compliant. You have to fulfill the original goal of this visa, which is create opportunities for the local economy, create jobs, remain compliant with taxes every year, clean bookkeeping. Those are the things that our clients find very valuable when it comes to creating new companies, not only setting them up and getting the visa approved, but the continuous consulting that we provide to remain compliant throughout the years.
And I was just thinking, and so, people who are demographically speaking, people who are getting like business visas are typically younger people. So then this is like two types of people: younger people coming to Colombia, migrating, and then there's the retired, right? Retired people. So what's a requirement? Is that a third type of visa or a different type of visa if you want to come here based on your retirement? Because I know some people who've done that.
Correct. The retirement visa, it's still one of the M-type visas, migration type visas. Those do count towards residency. You can get it for up to 3 years as well.
Mm-hmm.
The minimum wage still plays a role in this type of visa because the minimum benefits that you have to receive monthly are counted in minimum wages.
Right. So what's the minimum threshold in dollars?
Colombian pesos, it would be 3 minimum wages. That's equal to $1,400 at today's rate.
Okay.
So it's still reasonable to do that on your social security income.
What's important to realize, however, let's say you're getting a benefit of $2,000 a month.
Right.
You have to anticipate for any changes to the minimum wage as well, because if that changes, then you might not be qualified for it's a pensionado visa. So there's two types of people that get a pension visa. So there's the retirees that are getting Social Security benefits, and then you also have a lot of veterans that are moving to Colombia that also qualify.
Yeah, I think normally it only rises by 8 to about 11% per year. But last year we saw quite a big jump. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, based on previous years, yes, it is quite a surprise, the 23% increase to the minimum wage. A lot of taxes and fees are tied to the minimum wage. So that increases naturally the prices of things, including visa requirements. The visa requirements are directly attached to the minimum wage. So that means that if in the past you were planning to bring, like Robin mentioned before, $30,000, you will have to increase that by 23% to be able to meet this year's criteria. So maybe if projections were being made 1 or 2 years ago based on previous yearly increases, most of them maybe fell short.
What about curious? So if let's say you're close to meeting the threshold or you fall under the threshold from a pension visa, what if, let's say, you have investments in the USA? Can you use investments as as income to qualify?
Retirement visa, the requirement, it's only tied to the monthly benefits that gets deposited to your account.
Oh,
So the minimum required there would be 3 minimum wages, which is closer to $14 to $1,500, depending on the exchange rate. You have, as long as you comply with that, and you have your benefits letter compliant, visa ready, apostille translated, you have your decisions rating, you have your medical certificate, you have your insurance coverage for long enough, you're complying, you should get approved.
so even if you have other investments, financial investments in the United States, it doesn't apply. It doesn't count towards.
For the case of the retirement visa,
Correct.
no, it won't be relevant.
Okay, it's not relevant. It's only based on your Social Security or your pension, so to speak.
Though if those dividends from those investments in the United States are getting deposited to your account,
Okay.
so that you have larger income flowing, which is one of the requirements. Even though you are like basing your application on the social benefits that you are receiving, they also want to see your bank statements from the last 3 months. So if you're able to show that you have a steady income from other investments in the United States, that's only going to make your case more stronger. It increases the chances of getting 3 years as opposed to maybe 2 or 1 year. Or maybe.
In our experience going through the visa process here in Colombia, the most surprising thing I would say is just the amount of paperwork that this visa required. And I have quite a bit of experience with immigration myself because I immigrated to the United States in 2022. I received my citizenship. And so, applying first for a green card, then for my citizenship. Yes, you have to gather a lot of documents, but none of those documents have to be notarized, translated, apostille. So it seemed to me like at least immigrating to the United States is actually easier than immigrating to Colombia. Can you talk a little bit about that, and specifically whether gathering all those documents, is it easier to do it when you're still back in the US? Let's take US as an example, or can you equally do it while you're here in Colombia?
There's two parts to this answer. So one part, there's actually a do-it-yourself method, which a lot of people try, and I wouldn't suggest doing that because with the do-it-yourself method, there's no customer service, there's no one to help you if you did something wrong, and
Correct.
typically the do-it-yourself method is much longer. So for example, if you're trying to get a Department of State apostille, you either have to fly to Washington, D.C., stay there for 3 weeks and do it yourself, or you have to mail it in. And if you mail it in, it could take 8 to 12 weeks.
Wow.
Your FBI background check is only valid for 3 months.
Right.
So by the time you get the apostille back, you have to do the whole process again. So it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So using a third-party service will help you expedite it, and it can be done from the US or Colombia. The benefit of doing it from the US is you don't have to deal with international shipping. So international shipping, things can get lost in the mail, things get stuck at customs, things
Sure.
get delayed. So that's one of the most difficult things for starting in the US. So we do suggest that if you are in the US, try to get as much done as possible in the US. If you're not in the US, we can still help you in Colombia. I think this is one of the areas where we've optimized as much as possible in terms of logistics, in terms of giving people an experience where as if they were still in the US. So for example, the FBI background check, from Colombia, we can still do it in 24 to 48 hours. Whereas other people from Colombia, they might get their fingerprints taken, they might mail it in. So mailing it in takes around 2 to 3 weeks or it takes 2 weeks to get to the FBI. Once it's at the FBI headquarters, it sits in the mailroom for about a week, and then they start processing it. So it takes quite a bit of time. The thing about the FBI background check is 10% of applications actually get rejected due to low fingerprint quality. So some people believe that the digital fingerprinting, the live scan that you do, will help save you from this. But we've seen that 10% of even the live scan fingerprints can get rejected. So one of the processes that we have from Colombia is before you mail it in, we're able to We have software that will tell us the quality of the fingerprints and whether they'll pass or not. And if they won't pass, we'll get them reprinted right away instead of having to wait 2-3 weeks for the FBI to tell us that we can't use these.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, to answer your question, it's cheaper and easier to do it in the US because you just have access to faster mail, access to more facilities. But it's not impossible doing it from Colombia. If you're doing it the do-it-yourself method, I wouldn't recommend that at all.
And what was really interesting to me is that when we applied for a visa initially, and reading through the requirements on the official Colombian website, there was no requirement for an FBI background check. However, after we had submitted the application, they came back to us with this additional requirement. So hence, do-it-yourself approach can set you back a lot. So we really do recommend working with specialists. Well, I also wanted to ask you if the FBI background check, it sounds like it's mandatory now. Is it mandatory for all types of visas, or is there a way to get around that? And what kinds of visas are easier to apply for?
So originally, the FBI background check, when it comes for U.S. citizens, it wasn't required in all types of visas. It started gradually to become the standard for digital nomad visas, mainly due to the increased demand for this type of visa. So as long as you are a U.S. citizen over 18 years old, you're going to get required. The only exception would be beneficiary applications for coming from children. But it started with digital nomad visas, then increasingly we started getting additional requests, such as the one that you just mentioned, Katia, for FBI background checks for business investment visas, for real estate investment visas, I think it's always been mandatory for the retirement visas. So at this point, we just have been able to identify that across all types of visas, it's getting requested for U.S. citizens.
And what's the average duration or the length of time by the time you apply and get approval from immigration in terms of the status of your visa, your application?
Right. So on paper, the law states that it shouldn't take more than 30 calendar days. They should come up, the visa office should come up with an answer and a decision for your case. But then there's the case of additional requirements. And this is a very important point in the whole visa process. This is the part of Colombia where, yes, this is a very welcoming, a remarkably warm country, but the bureaucracy that you find here is not always obvious to digest if you come from another country. So yes, there is rule of law. We have predictable outcomes, but there are also layers of interpretation, especially in the visa process, because the outcomes often rely so much on interpretation and the discretionary range that the visa officers hold when reviewing a case. So it often depends on how well you anticipate these additional requirements before you get them. Mm-hmm. This only comes with empirical evidence through being exposed to many, many cases. We've been able to spot patterns. And going back to the question about whether it's better to apply from Colombia as opposed to from your home country. Well, I think other than the obvious constraint of if you're in Colombia, the clock's ticking, maybe you have 90 or 30 days left on your tourist visa. That would be a time constraint. We can handle it. 90 days, if you have 90, 60 days, we can prioritize your case. We can handle the documents. We have plenty of experience in rush processing. But increasingly, we've been able to spot patterns where consulates tend to be more reliable and more predictable when it comes to additional requirements, what's written in the law, and the positive outcomes when compared to the visa office in Bogota.
I see.
So my advice lately, especially for U.S. citizens and European citizens, have been, if it is within your means and it is within your plans to apply from abroad, Uh, let's do it that way. Tends to be more reliable and more predictable. Having said that, throughout plenty of experience, especially during the last year, I've been able to notice that not every consulate works exactly the same, especially in the United States. They vary from state to state.
Mm.
So yes, there at this point, I would say there are at least two consulates that I would probably advise against.
Oh, I have one question, just curious. Since we just got, our approval visa for 1 year, do we within, okay, two questions. When can we reapply to extend our visa status? And do we need to get another FBI background check?
So technically speaking, there is no such a thing as renewal of visas. You don't get to renew your visa. What you
Okay.
do is you get to reapply to apply again for the same type of visa. So
Oh,
you have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
oh,
All
wow.
the documentation that you presented on the first application, you have to resubmit it. You have to get fresh documents that are at least than 3 months old and are apostilled, translated, visa ready to be submitted. The only thing would be, such as in the case of maybe business investment visa, you have to bring more money because after 3 years, as I mentioned before,
Hmm.
minimum required investment went over the initial amount of investment that you brought. You might need to bring additional money. You just have to make sure that you channel it through the proper channels of investment. Make sure that you are doing the exchange rate through the proper timing channels and you're filling out the correct forms of declaration. You're using the specific codes. It's a very key point of any investment-based visa. And many clients in the past would come to me after they already brought the money or they already bought the property. And well, it was a case unfortunate because the money is already there, the investment is already there, but maybe they made a payment overseas, and the money must come through the proper channels in Colombia for it to be valid.
Interesting.
Yeah. In a nutshell, documents they only last 90 days. So even if you're still within the same application process, let's say that just
Correct.
like in your case, the first one was abandoned, and the second one, let's say for some reason it gets required again for more documents.
Mhm.
So even within that same application process, you might have to apply for a new FBI background check. One of the things that we do for our clients, however, is once you do the VIP service with us the first time, when you're renewing, you don't have to do VIP again. We store your prints for you, so you don't have to get printed again. We're able to do it much faster.
Oh,
And
great.
for our renewing clients, we do it at the standard price. So it's much faster, and then they're able to do it. Because we actually feel that it's not fair that you have to keep on doing it over and over. So we have processes to help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys have empathy. Well, before we wrap up our conversation, I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you would like to add, some advice you would like to give to our viewers.
Yeah, I think the advice that I would give is if you're considering coming to Colombia, well, the very first thing is just start early. So if you're looking at either renewing your visa, if you're in Colombia, right, and you're looking at renewing visa, if you start too late, for example, you start 30 days before your application expires, well, you might not get your visa. You might have to reapply again another time. And if you have to do that, then there's so much more headaches involved because you don't want to be irregular either. So you have to get a
Right.
salvoconducto to be able to stay legally in the country. And then
Right.
not only that, you also lose your migration status because it has to be um
Continuous, right?
yeah, one continuous stream. So if you break it for 30 days, you're done. So for us internally, for people that are applying 45 days before some kind of expiry date, whether that's their tourist stamp expiring or their current visa expiring, 45 days, that's an emergency case for us. We would suggest at least starting 60 days before.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Good
I would
advice.
also say, please don't optimize on costs. Don't go for the shortcuts. What you want to optimize is in clarity and durability for if it's relocation, if it's investment, The goal isn't just to get your visa approved, it's to build something solid enough that holds up over time. Because if your long-term plan is to aim for residency, you want to reapply, whether it's 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and you want something that holds up over time, over law changes, over administrative changes, political changes, the increase in minimum wages. So when people, I believe, when they take this approach, optimizing clarity and experience, Colombia works extremely well as a target for investment, as a second home, as a place towards residency. It rewards preparation, I would say. It rewards preparation, it rewards knowledge of how the system works, and good advice rather than the shortcuts.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Robin and Andres. It was really nice chatting with you today. And yes, our advice to everybody watching would be definitely go with professional support as you're going through your visa process. And don't be like us, trying to do it all on our own, because we did lose a lot of time and it was a lot of headache.
A lot of stress. Yeah.
But you guys made it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You guys are here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Turned out well. Thank you for having us, guys.